Hey, heroes. Welcome to week 15 or session 15 with the On Scene First ENP study group. One of our last sessions. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with the legislation. I don't know if it's worth my time or you just hearing me read from the screen. So I'm still on the fence about that. I might just send out the PDFs that I created because those really are something that you just have to read and learn. I don't have any tips or tricks on how to figure out the legislation piece and how to remember which one is which, but I will make that decision in the very near future. But either way, you'll get the materials over the next couple of days to be able to at least start the studying process. So this is week 15. We're going to go over NENA standards, but we are first going to go over a couple of missing pieces of information. So what I mean by that is, as I was going through the body of knowledge and comparing it to all of the presentations and my notes and previous sessions, there were a few slides that didn't make it into their respective section. So I just wanted to make sure that I went over those things. So with that, I will just share, we are past January 19th at this point. So if you were a part of the study group that went from October 6th to January 19th, you should have access to the Google group where you can access all of the PDFs, the MP3s, a copy of the practice exam will be there very shortly. And if you did not request access to that and you are planning on taking the exam in February or April, you can request access to that Google group where you can get all the materials that we used. Like I said, all the PDFs, MP3s, practice exams, etc. You can scan that QR code there in the middle or head on over to the onscenefirst.com website, training, /training /study ENP. And if you are planning on, you can access that materials at any time. Even if you plan on taking the exam in the summer or the fall, you can still request access to that if you want to get a jump on studying. But we will do another live session in March. On March 8th, we will be starting. So you can go right over to that same website and be able to register for the March 8th one. And if you want more information on what we're doing at On Scene First, you can head on over to onscenefirst.com and subscribe to our newsletter. And I would greatly appreciate that because we do lots of cool stuff here. I want to say thank you to Rapid SOS. They are our premier study group sponsor. They have been since our inception back in early 2021. I am always appreciative of the support that I still get from Rapid SOS. They will be sponsoring the next live session as well. So that means we already have 2 ENP scholarships that will be available. This last session, in case you missed it, we did work with NENA Ontario to provide a NENA specific session that was a couple of weeks ago in session 12. So if you are from Canada and you want that information, go check out session 12 or week 12. And if you want more information on NENA Ontario, you can scan that QR code or head on over to their website. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. This slide, I think there's only one slide in this section that I did not go over, and it was from the section on principles of telecommunications from week 2. So what I missed there was quality of service. So the quality of service is a measurement of the overall performance of a service in general. So basically it includes checking the latency, meaning the amount of time it takes to get one data packet to go from one place to another. And so if there is latency, meaning it's on the slower side or it's taking longer than expected, it could result in callers basically speaking over each other. So by the time you get the message from the caller and you're speaking, it might be coming on top of each other. The other thing that is checked during quality of service is packet loss, meaning are all the packets that we've talked about in the last couple of weeks, those packets of information, are they getting to the expected destination? So just think about it this way. If all the packets aren't getting there, it's going to sound a bit distorted, right? And then jitter is the variation in time delay between when the signal is transmitting and when it's received over the network connection, measuring the variability in what is called ping. And what this does is if there is jitter on the line, it causes that choppiness. I just remember if I had to describe it, I would say if you had a Nextel at any point, remember when it was like, yeah. So there we were probably dealing with some packet loss and some jitter because it kind of sounded robotic at times, but there were also pieces that were missing. So quality of service, QoS. Under network configurations, these were a couple of things that I missed. So first is the grade of service. Grade of service is a metric used in telecommunications to quantify the quality of service that is provided by a network. It measures the percentage of service requests blocked or delayed due to network congestion or unavailability. So if we have a whole bunch of traffic for whatever reason heading down the super highway of the ESI net or whatever the network is, the grade of service is going to give you kind of an understanding of where we are. So I don't know exactly how it is described, but if a 10's being the best grade of service and we have heavy congestion times, et cetera, the grade of service may drop down to a 5. So in other words, grade of service assesses how well a telecommunication system can handle incoming service requests without experiencing an overload that would lead to blocking or delaying those connections. And there's a lot of different factors that can impede that. The blocking probability is closely related to the grade of service. It's another key metric in the telecommunications network, but it basically represents the likelihood that the service request will be blocked or denied due to that congestion. So if we have a 3 on the grade of service, then the blocking probability is going to go up much higher, meaning that the system is bogged down and it's going to slow things down. Maybe all of the stuff doesn't get to its intended destination. So in other words, it measures how often users may experience blocked connections when trying to access that service. So as Tracy does, I would like to give you the toll booth analogy when it comes to these two different things. So the grade of service, if you want to consider it the highway capacity. So think of the highway's overall capacity as the grade of service. It's like the total number of lanes there are for traffic. So more lanes, more data can go through, flow through easier. So the more lanes we have, the better. A higher grade of service means that we have more lanes. And then if the highway has a high grade of service, it can handle large amount of traffic volumes. So that's what we prefer. However, sometimes maybe we have an accident in the lane or there's other reasons, it's rush hour, et cetera, and things get bogged down a little bit. Once we lose lanes or we have kind of something that gets in the way, like say a toll booth, that toll booth now becomes a blocking probability. So if I have a heavy traffic and I know there's a toll booth up there, then there's a high probability that it's going to contribute to even more traffic because folks have to slow down, right? So now picture that toll booth as the points where the service requests can be blocked or delayed. So we slow down. I don't have any money. I have to back up. So the greatest service is the actual highway and how many lanes that we can actually have that service on. And then the blocking probability is, what is the probability that this is going to get even worse? And if we have a toll booth on a highway that's already congested, then chances are it's going to increase the blocking probability. Emergency management section. One of the things that I failed to mention was TERT. How did it fall through the cracks? Not sure, but it did. Just know that TERT is Telecommunicator Emergency Response Task Force, and it is a group of trained telecommunications operations and support personnel that are able to respond to and work with other agencies to receive, process, dispatch, and monitor calls for assistance. TERT involves specialized teams of telecommunicators deployed to assist in an emergency response and recovery. So when we talked about response and recovery, and how some of the emergency management areas overlap, this is actually going to be one of those places that it overlaps as well. And if you want more information on TERT as a nationwide entity, I've provided the website there and you can check that out. There's also an APCO and NENA standard, the Telecommunicator Emergency Response Task Force standard. Again, as I've mentioned before, I have provided the link to the actual standard. However, you need to copy and paste this link because it's separated. So it is not going to be just a hyperlink that you can click on. E911 network design and architecture continue. Have a couple of things that I omitted here. So here you go. This term right here, third generation partnership project, 3GPP. There was a question on the exam on this particular topic. I don't remember what the question was, but basically what 3GPP is, it's a collaboration agreement that was established in December of '98. And it's a collaboration agreement that brings together several telecommunications standard bodies known as organizational partners. So how can we remember that? Not really sure, but put it on your list of things to remember in case you see it again. Also in this section, we talked, we have a section that got missed on CMRS. This is our commercial mobile radio services. They are also known as our wireless service providers. The FCC, this is the FCC term for what the carrier is, or the licensee whose wireless network is connected to the public switch telephone network. From the CMRS, it's going to break out into two other categories. But I want you to imagine the CMRS being a superhero of networks that powers your mobile phone. It is behind the scenes technology that allows you to make your calls, send text messages, and use data and on your device. And just know that some of those carriers and those providers do not allow voice and data to be used at the same time. I hope that we're getting away from that these days. I know Sprint was like that for a long time. But I'm hoping that that has changed because it does affect the ability to send additional data, as we mentioned in the last session, how we get that device-based location as well as additional data to go into the additional data repository. So it is the wireless carrier that determines whether or not voice and data can be sent at the same time. So that's the commercial mobile radio services. And then some of the legacy CMRSs have deployed something called CDMA. Again, technology behind the scenes, how the phone system is, how the phone network, the wireless phone network is working. So some of the CMRSs have deployed code division multiple access, and we'll talk about that. And then some deployed global system for mobile communication. So we'll break both of those down. So CDMA is a unique language system for mobile phones that allows multiple users to talk at the same time without interfering with each other. That's logical, right? It's a spread spectrum multiple access technique, and this technique spreads the bandwidth of data uniformly for the same transmitted power. So it gives us a much wider range to be able to have successful communications. When I was thinking of a way to have an analogy, I want you to think of a silent disco. But there's going to be a different. We're not all listening to the same music. But if you will, the scenario is similar. So the digital conversations, everybody in the silent disco has their own headset, right? But in this scenario, in the CDMA, there are specific codes. So if you and I are going to be partners, we would have the same code. And that's what allows me to hear your conversation and you to hear my conversation. But it also allows, by having these unique codes, it allows us to have several conversations going on at one time, but there isn't going to be a lot of interference. And we can have as many people in the room speaking because we have the headsets on. You and I are on our own frequency. We can be talking to each other and there isn't going to be any interference with that particular conversation because I can't hear what the other people are saying because of the headset and the unique code. I can only hear what you're saying. And then clear communications, because I don't have interference. We're close enough to each other. We're on the same channel and frequency, and it just makes clearer communication. As far as global system for mobile communication, this is a 2G technology. Universal Mobile Telecommunication System, which is a subset of GSM, is a 3G technology. Okay. And both are widely used in Europe and other countries. So what we're using here is CDMA, and what they're using in other countries is GSM, and the next onto the UMTS. So I don't think you'll see that. We mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning here again, is the LTE, long-term evolution, is basically the 4th generation network standard. I'm not going to get too far into here, but I think we're at 5G now. Who knows? It'll probably get much higher than that as well. But the more G's, the faster, the more data, the more efficient, etc. And then in this same section, we talk about a few different pieces of technology, equipment, etc., that's going to help the wireless network out. So first, we're going to refer to small cells. Oop, let me go back. Small cells. So a small cell is like a mini cell tower, enhanced mobile network coverage and capacity in specific areas. It's compact, it's low-powered wireless communication system that complements larger cell towers, providing improved connectivity in densely populated or high traffic. But the problem here is they have a smaller range, so 32 feet to 1 mile. And then what I'm going to do with these 4 is I want to show you. So if you go back and watch week 14, NG 911 framework, I talk about the benefits of using the ChatGPT technology to help in the study process. So I'm going to provide me asking the definition or to explain small cells using an analogy. And I really feel strongly about utilizing the website that I shared. You can use any of them, but I specifically use the open I think it's open.ai, but I talk about it in last week's session, right towards the beginning of the session, and it's super beneficial. But the small cell, the chat GPT analogy, picture compact Wi-Fi extenders or signal boosters strategically placed in different areas of a building. So explanation, small cells are like mini boosters enhancing cellular coverage in specific locations such as street corners, stadiums, shopping malls. Visually think of discrete devices integrated into the environment, contributing to improved network capacity. So we may not have a lot of towers in one area, but if we know of an area that gets congested easily, the cell providers may put up these small cells, and you don't even see them. You wouldn't know that they're there. Macro cells are much bigger. They are noticeable. They sit on, towers, etc. And it's a cell that is used in the cellular network with the function of providing radio coverage to a large area. So this range is much higher, 20 miles, could be up to 20 miles away. And here's the chat GPT analogy here. The analogy, imagine a traditional cell tower with antennas and equipment mounted on a tall structure. The explanation, macro cells are large-scale infrastructure of cellular networks. Visually, think of the iconic cell towers that cover wide outdoor open areas, providing extensive coverage for urban and rural landscapes. So macro, big, right? So this is where we're going to get the bulk of our network, and it's going to go much further than a small cell, which is a smaller device, smaller area, smaller range. So here's just a diagram, a graphic that can kind of identify the small cell and the macro cell towers and the information that is useful on those. Fixed mobile refers to a service allowing users to have a fixed line and a mobile communication capabilities within a single device or plan. What I think of here is Wi-Fi dialing. So I could be in a home using a fixed mobile device, meaning it's connected to the Wi-Fi in my home, but I can also leave the home and now it's going to switch to the mobile part of it. So it enables seamless communication, whether users are at home, which is fixed, or on the go, which is mobile, offering flexibility in how they connect with each other. And then here is the chat GPT analogy of that. Visualize a mobile phone seamlessly transitioning between Wi-Fi and cellular networks within a building. Fixed mobile represents the convergence of a fixed and mobile service together. It doesn't have a distinct physical appearance, but symbolizes a unified user experience where services seamlessly shift between a fixed line and a mobile network, ensuring continuity. Okay. And then femtocells. These are fun. Looks like my picture's cut. Oh, looks like my picture's cut off a little bit. Femtocells are wreaking a little bit of havoc in the 911 space. So a femtocell, also called, it's a subset of a small cell, but it's also called a microcell. They're smaller and usually in houses or business. So if I have a problem, if I have AT&T and I don't have great cell service in my house, I can get a femtocell from my network provider, pop it in, it connects to the internet, and it will allow me to make a call on that Wi-Fi enabled booster on my cell phone. So it connects to a service provider network to the broadband network. So it usually goes through some type of Wi-Fi network. Here's the problem. Oh, next slide is the problem. So the chat GPT analogy is visualize a small dedicated Wi-Fi router placed inside the home. Femtocells are like personalized signal boosters for residences or small offices. They are compact devices designed to enhance cellular coverage within a confined space, providing localized and reliable connection, which is all well and good, except when you're trying to be a knucklehead. So in this particular call, this is why I am extremely adamant in all of my training and a few of the classes that I teach. I talk about the importance of understanding your ALI and what should be on the ALI, what it's supposed to look like, what's supposed to exist, what's not supposed to exist. And this is a perfect example. So a few things went on in this call. So my dispatcher receives this call, and I say this all the time. This ALI doesn't look like your ALI. Maybe it looks like your ALI. This is when we had Vesta, but this is what our ALI screen looked like at the time. So even though it may be different than what your ALI looks like, all of the information and the components are the same. So bear with me. So this was a wireless phase 2 call. So by definition, hold on one second. So by definition, if this is a wireless phase 2 call, as you can see here, we are showing a 911 area code, and I will come back to that in a second. So what it's appearing like is it is a phase 2 disconnected cell phone. Okay, fair? Fair. This address with a phase 2 call should be the address of the tower. And this latitude and longitude, if plotted on a map, should be the location of the wireless phase 2 person, the handset. Fair? But if it's a 911 area code, then in theory, this latitude and longitude should be the location of the tower. Well, that is not what happened here. In this case, the lie detector proved that all of this was a lie. So the 911 call comes in, the dispatcher gets hung up on. When she goes to call back, realizes can't call back because it is considered a disconnected cell phone because there's a 911 area code. And in this case, it was a disconnected cell phone. But I just want to show you what happens. We know that there are no towers at 21 Bishop Road. So this address right here that says 21 Bishop Road, that should be the tower address. And this latitude and longitude are the same location. And look at that. It's a house. So explain how a wireless phase 2 call from a 911 area code phone lists a home address and the coordinates are showing the same home address. So when we take that away, 21 Bishop Road, and we're at 21 Bishop Road right here. So this immediately should make the dispatcher go, something's wonky here. Well, in this case, when I placed a call back to the residents, because my dispatcher sent an officer, when she sent the officer, he confirmed a 911, he said, someone here called 911. They said, we didn't call 911. He said, okay, well, it looks, it's all coming back to this address, but there's no phone number. So we really can't prove that they called 911 or they didn't. So when my dispatcher was explaining this to me and how she was confused because what should be the tower address on a wireless phase 2 is the home address and something was wonky. So I looked up the address in our CAD. I got a home phone number and I called and I explained who I was. And I said, it looks like the way your 911 call came in, whether they called or they didn't call, something is wonky. And I want to just try to figure out what's going on. So if there should be a need for a 911 call from your address, I just need to know, do I have to file a discrepancy? Do we need to fix this problem? So to make a longer story short, they were using a femtocell. So I'll go back here for a second. So see where it says fixed? That's a giveaway. Fixed, ATTMO. That means it's not a network. It's not, if it was the network, if it was utilizing the AT&T network, then it would just say ATT or AT&T MO. But in this case, it uses the word fixed, meaning it's a fixed location. So a fixed location is what's sending that call through. So we learned that there was a femtocell in the house and they were using a disconnected cell phone, that they dialed not 911, but 112. Now, 112 is the European number for 911, and they had seen it on social media that if you dial 112, then it will still go to 911. So the two knuckleheads were trying it out. So it was in fact a disconnected cell phone, but yet it gave us an exact location of the caller, which usually doesn't happen, and the address, where the tower address should be located, was a home address, which also matched up with the latitude and longitude, which shouldn't have happened. So knowing your ALI screen, knowing, can you leave that door open? Knowing your ALI screen, knowing what's supposed to be on that screen, and knowing that femtocells are knuckleheads and wreak havoc on times is important. Here is another example. This is a call that I received from a telecommunicator where she actually saw the word femtocell on her ALI screen. And I showed this particular ALI 2 sessions ago when we talked about GPS and latitude and longitude. And this is the one where they had longitude and latitude. And so that could be an error if we put it in wrong, trying to translate what those are. But if you want more on that, go back 2 sessions ago where we talk about the GPS coordinates, etc. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if you're watching your ALI screen, then you may see the word femtocell. So just know that these femtocells are wreaking havoc on the 911 system. So there you go. It's a wireless call. It is showing an address of 13231 Oakbourne Avenue. But what I want to show you here is this is another error that telecommunicators make. We take reverse geocoded addresses at face value, and we shouldn't. So what I mean by that is if I was to take, and this is how I figured out that this was backwards. So generally speaking, we usually display latitude, then longitude. And so if I was to input this the way that it's listed, it's not going to give me an accurate location. And again, I explained that 2 sessions ago. But what I want to show you is how damaging it can be if we are assuming that the numerical is spot on. And some folks will be adamant about that. And so this is just an extra tidbit of information that I have in one of my classes. And this is an example of why we don't just settle for an officer saying it's unfounded, because I'm going to show you what's going to happen. Say we had an open line 911 call and there's a domestic situation going on, or somebody says, help, I need the police. And then we get nothing else. They hang up, they disconnect the call. The address, the reverse geocoded addresses that's showing is 13231 Oakbourne Avenue. But when you plot the latitude and longitude appropriately, this actually plots 13211 Bourne Avenue. So if we zoom in, hold on one second. If we zoom in on this picture, it's hard to see, but if I was to zoom in, it would actually show 13211 as being this location here. And this address is actually this house right here. So imagine if you were so hell bent on the reverse geocoded address when when actuality, the reverse geocoding was off by a couple of numbers. The officer knocks on the door to the address that you're dispatching to because that's all you have. But using tools like this can help you prevent that from happening. Just an added piece of information. The last section we're going to go over here is the NENA standards. There isn't a ton of information here, relatively quick overview, but NENA wants you to know about their standards and development process as part of the ENP exam. So there are NENA standards and other documents that are available. They are locatable at nena.org/page/standards. NENA is the premier public safety organization for defining 911 operational and technical issues, standardizing technical solutions, and developing operational model recommendations and guidelines. This is where our standards live. There are lots of standards in there, and NENA does do some with APCO as well. So we first have NENA committees. Okay, so our NENA committees are the folks that come together to develop the standards, make recommendations for the standards and other documents. And these areas listed are the areas in which our standards fall. So whatever the standard is, it's going to fall in one of these categories: accessibility, agency systems, data management, data structures, 911 core services, systems security and resiliency, PSAP operations, PSAP logistics, communications, development groups, administrative, and wellness. And so if you want more information on those committees or how you can actually get on one of those committees or what working groups under the committees are available, you can click on that link right there. So the NENA registry system, when developing and deploying technical standards that employ enumeration or lists of values where the enumeration or list can reasonably be expected to change over time as new technology, vendors, service providers, and other stakeholders evolve. It is a known and stable way to maintain the current acceptable values in the enumeration or list is required. The values in the enumeration list are called a registry. So when you look at the standard, it's like standard 1.3.2, right? And so that's your enumeration and how they keep track of standards and where they are and whether or not they're archived or if this is a new standard or an updated standard, etc. Administrative documents. These are a couple of the standard documents, administrative documents that you can check out. And so when you see this, it has 000.231-2020. That means that as of 2020, this is what we are utilizing for the master glossary of 911 terminology. So if you want more information on that, there's the administration ADM standard for that. And then the organizational structure and operational procedures, as you can see here, another administrative document, 001.5, 2019. The next one might be 001.6. Okay. Archive documents. There is a specific website for archive documents. NENA maintains a document archive for research and historical purposes. The user is cautioned to note the date of these documents and recognize that more current information may be available and it may not be available depending on the situation. And you might even find that a standard changes names. And I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. There are NENA technical documents, and there are categories such as an informational document and a requirements document. They're not the same as standards. So they don't have to follow the same process. An informational document is used as a means of distributing information on a particular subject to the public safety industry at large. So think about when apps started to come into the 911 space. Rapid SOS's Haven app. We didn't have enough information. We didn't have, a lot of knowledge and how they're doing these things, but we wanted to get the information out to folks. So maybe they create an informational document to just say, hey, be on the lookout for this type of situation coming in to your 911 center. It doesn't have an organized committee. It doesn't have an organized standard, but it's just an informational document that they want to get out on something that happens to be entering the 911 space. The requirements document is developed by a NENA committee, and it's used as a basis for a NENA committee or outside standards development organization to develop formal industry accepted standards and guidelines. So what is required to make this particular standard happen? As far as technical documents, there is a NENA standard and a NENA reference. The standard is the minimum of characteristics of a system that, when implemented, assures reliable and effective system performance by the limited requirements. It includes, but not limited to, requirements and specifications. A NENA reference is a publication that may contain examples that do not fit a typical standard, an information document, or a requirements document, such as public education, PSAP training, white paper, checklists, or website material. So how does a document become a standard? NENA documents will go through an established, detailed review and approval process. This process is modeled after the American National Standards Institute process, ANSI. You probably heard this before, but an ANSI standard. The NENA standards development process includes the following steps: internal member review and comment period. Then it goes to the public for comment. And when I say public, it's to the organization, out to folks that are not members of the particular organization. The respective committee then acts on the proposed comment. So if some folks say, hey, these are some spelling errors that need to be fixed, or you forgot about this, or you should add this, or why wasn't this explained, etc. And then it's going to go back to the process review committee once those comments have been taken care of. And the process review committee confirms that the proper processes were followed. Once approved by the process review committee, it is then sent to the executive board of NENA. If the NENA executive board approves it and the standard is set to be an ANSI accredited standard, then it is sent to ANSI for approval. So it takes a while for this to happen. But what is ANSI? ANSI is the American National Standards Institute. The institute evaluates and assures that the proper process is taken. They are not evaluating the content of the standard. So they don't know what 911 folks need to do. They're just validating that the process was followed, that it went out to the member review. It went out to the public review. It came back to be fixed up. It went to the review board. It went to the executive board. It's basically checking the boxes to say, yes, they did all the things that they're supposed to. This prevents me from going, I think there needs to be a standard on this, and just putting it out there as, this is how I think things should be done, so I'm going to create a standard on it and do it all by myself. So NENA is an ANSI accredited standards developer. So that is an ASD. And therefore, it is a standard development organization, an SDO. What ANSI needs in the process to approve the proper process is there has to be openness. It has to be open to everybody. There's different roles that folks will play. There's director roles. There's just public interest. There's frontline folks that are using the standard. They try to have a good mix of a bunch of people, but nobody can be turned away. A lack of dominance. It can't be dominated by any one single company. There has to be balance of interest, coordination and harmonization, has to be attempts to resolve conflict. Hold on one second. Oops. Notification of standards development. So making sure that it's shared in the appropriate places. So NENA uses something called Workspace, I think it is, and make sure that it gets posted there. Consideration of views and objectives. There has to be ample time for reviews and comments. There has to be a consensus vote. So everybody has to be in agreement, and there's a computerized process that does that as well. Appeals, if I feel very strongly that something should be changed but I get outvoted, there's an appeal process that can happen. And then having written policies and procedures that will govern the particular standards process. So Delane Arnold, she was rest her soul, she was phenomenal in understanding how the standard and ANSI process goes. So I just hope that it's all documented somewhere, because she knew her stuff for sure. So this is what the timeline of a standard just looks like in general form. So first, a work group is established. There's a need for a standard. So I'll use the example of the wellness. So way back when we had back in 2013, there was a acute stress, and I forget the total name of it right now, but it was an acute stress standard that became available in 2013. Fast forward to a few years ago, I'm going to say 2019, we started working on the updated version. Myself and Jim Marshall from the 911 Training Institute were the co-chairs. Never had done it before, so it was a lot. And if you were working on that standard group with me, thank you very much. It was challenging at best, and then we hit COVID. So it took a little bit longer than expected to get the process done. But basically what happened is they had to stand up a working group to say, we need to update this standard desperately, because the 2013 standard for wellness and a telecommunicator didn't include things like obesity and sleep deprivation. So when we look at a standard, it needs to be updated. So the work group was created. The co-chairs were identified and assigned and given their marching orders. And then we created as a group all of the folks that signed up on the website, at the website that you saw earlier. We worked on a draft standard. So we had the draft standard. Once we have the draft completed, it will go out to the members of the organization. So all of the NENA members were able to comment and provide feedback. Once it goes to the members, it then goes out to the public. It gets posted to the public for a while to see if there's anyone who wants to add information. Any updates that are made or need to be made go to the work group leadership. So in this particular case, it came back to Jim and I to clean up some things or clarify things, etc. Once we completed that process, it goes to the process review committee. Once they sign off, it goes to the executive board. And then once the executive board signs off, it will then go to ANSI to get the stamp of approval. So we now have a new standard. I don't remember if it was 2022 that it went active, but the name change, it is now to protect the well-being of the 911 telecommunicator. So standard to protect the well-being of a 911 telecommunicator. So check that out. It's kind of cool. And then once it's approved by ANSI, then it becomes a standard. So, not sure why that is in white, but if you did want more information on standards, you can check out the nena.org standards. There you go. So not a whole lot on the actual standards. However, there are some questions that I recall seeing on standards. Not a ton, not a ton. And I want to say I remember something along the lines of describing the difference between a technical document, informational document, or something like that. So there you have it. So with that, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can use that quick contact form there. You can reach out to me or use my email address. My social media is there. In the lower right-hand corner is a private Facebook group for public safety that gears towards mental health and wellness. We have lots of really great conversations there. But until next time, heroes, stay safe, stay strong, stay here. We need you.